The MLB has a very big problem with the baseballs.
They're terrible. Some laces were huge, some were fluffy.
They're bad. They're all different. First inning, they're decent. The third inning, they're bad. The fourth inning, they're okay. The fifth inning, they're bad.
Definitely the balls need to be better.
We test the ball very rigorously. We've made those testing results available. There's nothing that we're seeing that we believe would account. Means we're going to look hard at the specifications. Maybe the specifications need to be different. And again, the other thing I would point out, these are handmade products.
This is The Beat Writer, the podcast with Marcos Grunfeld. Watch us on YouTube at youtube.com/The Beat Writer, or listen to us on Spotify or any podcast player from Google to Apple Podcasts.
It would be very informal, like to not announce a modification on the balls, like by MLB, like, as serious as it is, there should be someone, or at least in the previous season or during the season, whenever they consider they have to change the balls. Like, I mean, nobody announced it, and it affects pitchers. It affects the game, of course. So if I'm a pitcher and I'm throwing with a baseball that is lighter or is heavier or is bigger or has different seams, at least if I'm announced that this year the balls are going to be bigger, lighter, or whatever the modification is, we should know as players, because you have to, especially pitchers, have to get used to this new ball.
But I think that the specifications in size and measures and weight cannot be modified by the rule. We have to modify the rules first.
The official rules are very broad in terms of the specifications, and I was going to say, I try to use the word tolerances when I can, because for manufacturing, manufacturing specifications it's almost like that's the better word, because that's the physical, here are the definitions of how we're thinking of the different physical properties of the ball as they're being made. Like manufacturing specifications, I don't know a different word, but that kind of range of like 5 to 5 1/4 ounces, that's pretty broad, or 9 to 9 1/4 inches around, also pretty broad. So the new dead baseball that they designed fits that. Absolutely. I mean, it's occasionally they come in too light. They have to be pretty dried out to come in too small. They almost always do fit that. To your point about announcing, even for what I find interesting is even for that dead ball that they said they were going to use, I should say, for 2021, that was not ever an announcement. What happened was there had been an article that Stephanie Apstein wrote for Sports Illustrated on the study that I did on the 2020 baseball. And they did actually end up saying, oh yeah, we did design this new baseball. And the reasons they gave for why it wasn't being used, although I did find it was being used, but in saying it wasn't being used, didn't really fit had it been a full season. Like, they've made too many of them for them to not do kind of what they did in 2021 had we had a full 6 months of baseball, postseason, et cetera. But when they told teams, yeah, there's this new dead ball that we've designed specifically to be dead, the point is they told Sports Illustrated. 2 days later, they sent a memo specifically to teams, GMs, AGMs, equipment managers. That memo was leaked to The Athletic, who then reported it. Even MLB after that has referred to it as an announcement. It was never an announcement. It was a leak of a private internal memo. And yet they were happy with that. In fact, the first time that they admitted to any kind of, change or whatever in a public sense was actually for the study that came out in the end of November on my 2021 research. This is Bradford Davis's work in the Insider, where they did say, yeah, sure, we use two baseballs. They sort of skirted around the fact that they made two baseballs and that it was not a supply chain issue, but
they said the word used unintentionally, and it's like you're saying, like they made too many baseballs with certain modifications, but then they did too many. It didn't, like, they're trying these balls during the season where careers of people is like going on, and sudden, all of a sudden they change it because let's change the ball because this ball is not like it's not changing scores.
Well, it's not. The thing is, the two different baseballs is not unintentional. Like, that's something that we sort of have to get beyond. I realize that everybody who loves the game, everybody who sort of thinks of the game in a logical way, yes, it should be played with one baseball. I agree. For whatever reason, for 2020 manufacturing and for 2021, they made two kinds of baseballs, and not like at the same time. They would take about a few months and they would make the dead ball, and then they would switch hard over to it, or to making the live ball, and then after a few months switch back. So, and they didn't have enough of one or the other to have not used two kinds of baseballs. The only reason we saw leftover 2020s was frankly because they had leftover 2020s. We've never had that before, where we had like only 2 months of a season, but they made an entire season's worth of baseballs, including both kinds. And then when they told teams in February of 2021, yeah, we're going to use this dead baseball, not only did they use both kinds, which again, they had made for 2021 before that announcement, but they kept making both kinds after that announcement. I found both live balls and dead balls made after they told teams we're only using dead balls for 2021. So it's not even like they decided they were going to switch to just making dead balls. They kept making both kinds.
But
there is a point to this for somebody, but I don't know what it is.
But for instance, today I was making my podcast in the morning about yesterday's swept of the White Sox and what happened. And in my fantasy baseball team is the judge. So Aaron, I think he doesn't care. I think for him, there is not a dead ball at all right now. He has 15 home runs. So you have to hit it hard. It doesn't matter if you are, I think that if you are a slugger and you have the right swing, because this is physics. So if you have the right swing in the right position, no matter what. So
yeah, but
because this is physics.
We're talking individually for one guy that is having success. We know these guys are strong enough to get the ball out, whatever it is, live, dead balls, whatever kind of balls they're gonna take out of the park anyways. But if we individualize like people that is having success with these balls or with the other ones, like, they're all gonna hit home runs. But it looks like in the past, it seemed to be like only the power hitters got the ball to the upper deckers, like to the second decker, and now everybody is like getting so many home runs, like the same far, like guys that are medium sized, guys that are like Altuve, guys that are like Judge, like everybody's like getting the ball really, really far, and that wakes you up and tells you like what's going on with the balls. Like everybody's hitting long shots.
I agree with you.
You know what I mean? It's not like, we agree everybody hits and get the ball for sure.
I think now we are sincere baseball, because in the 80s and in the 90s, even in the 70s, last century, so it was normal for sluggers to slug. But today, even small people and people who used to be slappers are sluggers. So this is crazy. So that's crazy.
But
that is not true.
That is
not believable for me. So that's my point of view. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to take into account though is there is something. This is what's interesting. The balls that, because I've already been looking at baseballs from this season, and there's two things that I've noticed. One, we are seeing leftover 2021 baseballs, which I would have expected. When I looked at what was used last year, they probably only used about half of the balls that they actually made for 2021. So they've got, say 500,000 baseballs sitting in inventory somewhere. They're not just going to leave them sitting there. They're going to use them. So first of all, what I'm seeing mostly are leftover 2021s, and I am seeing specifically the dead balls. What I find interesting though is that they're leftovers of both kinds of baseballs. So at some point, they're not going to leave a couple 100,000 live baseballs sitting on shelves. Yeah. So I think those should be showing up at some point. So I'm keeping an eye out. But the other thing is that understanding, when they're using leftover 2021s, that means it's not just the same kind of baseball as last season. We are physically seeing exactly the same baseballs. So I've gone through, I've cracked the batch code or the inventory code. So I'm finding baseballs that were used last season, like exactly the same baseballs made at exactly the same times. But there is something about what's happening with them. I think it's the way they're using the humidors that does seem to be making the balls different. I mean, the Mets had a humidor last season. The Red Sox had a humidor last season. You never heard pitchers talking about the balls being bad or every single baseball being different. And frankly, I have yet to hear any comment from any player that doesn't fit into that. And not only that, but I did look at things that I built a couple small humidors last season to look at stuff on my own, not expecting this to happen. But what I found was two things that players are now reporting. One is that here, I brought show and tell, by the way. This is a baseball from a game that a friend of mine caught for me from this year.
Okay.
And then this is just a cross section. So the thing is with the new baseball, the dead one, this by the way is this one is I think actually from the mid 2010s, but every baseball that I've looked at back into the 90s is made exactly like this. They didn't actually, there haven't been any changes to the physical inside of the baseball that I've found until 2020. And not certainly, not in the way that they've done it. What happened was MLB deadened the ball. There's 3 layers of yarn here. So this is just most people think about the pill, the core right here as being what's important. In this case, it really relates to the yarn. So there's 3 layers of yarn. So we've got this inner layer, which is the thick yarn. There's then a layer of white yarn that's like a mid-size, and then a thinner layer of yarn on the outside, and then the cover. What they did to deaden the ball was they actually wound this inner layer more loosely. So the ball itself is lighter because this is just, there's less there, it's just less dense. The effect that it's supposed to have is it's going to end up, hitting, there's going to be less of a trampoline effect against the bat. It's going to squish more. Think of it as like underinflating a basketball. So it's just going to thud as opposed to bounce off the bat. And so that was the goal. It was to get exit velocities down. Interestingly enough, they're up, but yeah, they did a bad job designing this, I guess is my point.
What do you think for you? Do you think it should be like announcement, like what kind of ball they're going to use, like for certain years, whatever is an experimental ball or not, but or whatever they call it, because when you talk about two kind of balls and balls here and balls there, they're experimenting, and it's like playing with statistics. Like, okay, yep. Hitters are not hitting very good. Okay, let's take the live balls now. Oh, too many home runs. Oh, play the dead balls now. For us, because I consider myself a fan too, even though that I play. But for me, it's like, do they play with the statistics? Because these two kind of balls, like doing now, doing after, change the ball here, change the ball there. It's like they want to play with the statistics sometimes, and then like experiment that way, and then for the next following year, so have the right ball.
Yeah, this is, I mean, this is, as far as I can tell, really the first time. There have been changes in the past, but they were changes that were announced in advance. They were changes where the players were actually involved in doing the testing. You know, this idea of a secret change that is announced after the fact is unprecedented. There's been nothing like it. So I'm not even sure, you know, like the idea of what the intent is not something that I can speak to, because I just don't know. I mean, it doesn't make sense to change the ball at all, let alone using two, or even, I mean, it's possible that what we might see this season is some kind of a switch back and forth. You know, like right now, I'm mostly seeing dead balls. Maybe what they do is they start sending the live balls out. What's interesting though is there had been speculation after, you know, like particularly after Chris Bassett came out and talked about, you know, the balls being bad, and there was a lot of focus there.
Okay.
That, you know, what was it, like not that weekend, but the next, there was speculation of, oh yeah, have they, you know, sent live balls out for, you know, for that weekend or something. And the thing is, if they had decided to, you know, okay, we're going to introduce live balls in response to players complaining, because of the humidors, any ball that goes in the humidor has to sit there for 2 weeks. So even if like the next day they had suddenly managed to decide, okay, we're going to change every single baseball,
Doctor,
it would still be 2 weeks later before they showed up, which is not, like, people started speculating about maybe we're getting live balls less than 2 weeks later.
yes,
So I'm not
Doctor,
sure you could even do something that's a reaction like that.
but why do they put the baseballs in the humidor? Why do they that for? That's my question.
The idea is that, I mean, on the surface, it's not a bad idea. It's really that they, the goal seems to be to have particularly offensive numbers, I think, kind of the same everywhere, because I mean, it really is, the extreme would be, say, Coors Field, I mean, or Chase is another one, where you've got, by having drier conditions, it does make the balls harder, and therefore they come off the bat faster. And so by using a humidor in those situations, you actually will deaden the ball by adding moisture to it, or at least putting it in conditions that are more humid than the surroundings. The US is huge. You know, we've got baseball played in all kinds of different climates. It changes a lot over the course of a 6-month season. So if, you know, if they somehow want to minimize those changes, you know, if you want, you know, the way that the ball plays in, you know, at Target Field in Minnesota in April versus, you know, in Texas in August, one way presumably you can get around some of those differences would be if they're all being stored in the same temperature and the same humidity all the time, then the ball itself isn't going, you know, the climate through which it is traveling, through which when it's being used would be different, but the ball itself isn't sitting in, you know, a situation where it's like hot and dry during that period. So it makes sense. The problem is it's not working very well.
It's try to standardize hitting, but Doctor, this is not fair with former players, and because in the 80s, in the 90s, so Babe Ruth and all those big guys, they play with the ball, with the baseballs, whatever you are. So I don't care if they were in St. Louis or in Minnesota or in Memphis or whatever. So they use the same ball during the whole year. And now they want to standardize the baseballs. If, from my point of view as a journalist, that's absurd to me, because baseball is like life. So you can't standardize like coffee drinking, or you can standardize walking, a way of walking, because you want everyone to Or
As
in
soon as you said
basketball.
coffee drinking, I'm thinking there's a Starbucks on every corner of here. They've
Yes.
absolutely standardized coffee drinking.
Yes, so I don't like it.
So that's not the
I
best
like,
example.
for instance, they have Starbucks here, but I prefer Café Santo Domingo even. I drink this without an advertising because I love this coffee. So, and they have a Starbucks here. So,
But the point being that the Starbucks sort of is like the humidor, you know, and so enough people are okay with it.
I don't know if you agree with me, doctor, because it's absurd for me. So, and by the way, before everything, I am just curious because in Venezuela, I know that we use like 2,000 boxes of baseball during a season, but how many boxes of baseball, how many dozens of baseball are used during a full season, including postseason?
Oh, for Major League Baseball?
Yeah.
What's it? MLB is supplied with 100,000 dozen, you know, like boxes of dozens. So 1.2 million baseballs just for Major League Baseball.
Wow.
For a
1.2
season.
million?
1.2 million. And then for a season. And then with AAA being added in 2019, they're provided with 50,000 boxes. So that's another 600,000. So they actually now send 1.8 million to the States. And they used to not go through, like they used to have, you know, enough. In 2019, it looks like they really got into authenticating the baseball, and they did run out for the postseason. So like when we saw the ball totally changed for the 2019 postseason, what I found was that they were taking balls. In fact, they ended up being balls that were ultimately used for 2020, but like they'd been made before October, even though they were intended for 2020. And so those balls ended up being used in the postseason. And so, which were not, you know, they were made differently, or at least they were dried at the end differently than the 2019s. So, you know, they really did kind of dump these weird baseballs because they'd run out of actual 2019s. You know, there was an article that Molly Knight did for The Athletic that, yeah, you know, they were authenticating baseballs and selling game balls, and suddenly there's you know, they went through that 1.2 million. They were all gone.
Wow.
So
yeah.
The spring training period is very important for the players because they can work with these baseballs. The baseballs that were used in the spring training this year were the same that they are using right now in the season, or are they different? And how much time have you working with the researching of the baseball?
I haven't gotten as many spring training balls from this season as I have from previous, but unlike what was it in the 2021 spring training and for this year, they didn't do any special balls that were stamped spring training. They were just using Major League Baseballs, and the ones that I got were mostly 2021 leftovers. I did get one 2022. It's like one of the few I've seen. But you know, they were just normal baseballs, normal game quality. If you see ones that have spring training stamps, those very often can actually be, you know, they would have been discards otherwise. Like they'll use spring training balls like that to get rid of ones that they're not otherwise use in games. So, but yeah.
It is interesting, you know, if we talk about these stats about the season with using different kind of baseballs, like let's say, let's use the example that you just or what you just talked about, live balls and dead balls. Let's say we're playing this 2022 with both balls. They change it back and forward. And you talked about that the MLB or teams ran out of baseballs for the postseasons.
Right.
So imagine that those balls are live and are going to be brought into the playoffs. Now, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes, no, absolutely.
How much going to change the result of a World Series? I know players don't care because they're still gonna hit whatever balls they play with. I mean, but we're talking about like MLB putting balls or the right ball. But if you are trying now 2 balls and then you run out of them, how much can affect a World Series winner or loser, like in this situation?
Well, I mean, in 2019, we definitely saw that. I mean, because like the Twins were they were just designed, like they obviously didn't know they were going to get that like, you know, rocket ball essentially in 2019. They had just built a team that was going to be very power heavy, and they ended up in the right place at the right time with exactly the right baseball to, you know, break these team home run records. They would have done great in the postseason, except that they suddenly ended up with a deader ball, and so they just crashed and burned. Ironically, the dead ball for that is now actually what we're thinking of as the live ball. And what we call the dead ball is really dead and is made differently. So because the 2019, I mean, on the inside, back to this, it's actually identical on the inside. The difference is that the way that they dried them out, because you actually have to make the leather damp to make the cover fit, because it'll be flat and they need to curve it around to stitch it on.
Does it mean horse cow?
What? It's cowhide. It's cowhide.
It's cowhide?
Yeah.
Because it used to be a horse hide.
Yeah, they introduced cowhide in 1974.
Okay.
That was the
Doctor,
first year they did that.
Why in America, with such a great country, and there's no way a machine or an industrial process to sew the ball, so the ball is still sewing it by hand?
There's actually no way that, I mean, I'm sure there are people who have patented things to do that, but it's really the nature of it is not something that's easily done with a machine. Even if the machine exists, I suspect it's frankly still cheaper to have people do it than to try to set up the machines and make sure that they work for making 1.8 million baseballs.
Yes, that's why.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 2 million baseball just for major leagues and AAA. So I cannot imagine.
But
yes, I
all
cannot
over the
imagine
world,
how
every
many
baseball
people
in the world is done by hand, though. All of them.
So
Every single baseball.
Yeah, and this is a game that was made like 100 years, and then the balls in those times had to be like that. Like if you want to have like the one you're talking about, they have to make a new ball so they can do it.
They would have to change the seams entirely.
That's something that is keeping like the baseball gloves like very traditional in baseball. It has to be traditional.
That's why we love this sport so much. So the ball.
I'm serious though. You would literally have to change the way the cover is put on. We'd have to turn it into something like cricket.
Yeah. Synthetic or something like that, so they can machine can do it. So we're talking about these cheating or these so-called external substance that the pitchers use. Mm-hmm. You mentioned about an experiment that was made with baseballs before, and this year there was a guy that I know that works in Major League. We were doing an experiment, and then he wanted me to throw with the baseball of the Major Leagues of Japan and the Major Leagues of Korea.
I have not seen any Korean balls, although I do have some Olympic balls.
You should add that to your study because they're different. They're supposed to have some sticky substance in the leather. To make try to make the pitcher like have some grip on the ball. Yep. And I use these balls. I threw bullpen with these balls, and they're certainly different. They are very different in the sense of the grip. The Major League Japanese ball was a little bit more sticky than the Korean ball. But the thing with this experiment is that Major League is trying to get their ball kind of the same way to have some sticky on the
ball. See this ball?
Yes,
it's really it's I mean, okay, to some extent it's dinged up, but you see, okay, to compare you see that just the color of the laces, it's like
lighter.
This
and
one
dark.
Is a pre-tacked AAA ball from last season. This actually has the pre-tacking. If you feel it, it feels like it's rubbed up, even though it's white. I've got a few like this. These are just literally shown up this season. Someone sent them to me.
So,
and I guess they're leftover. But this is MLB.
So
So
isn't,
Willis,
isn't
let me
it,
tell you something before Eduardo started. Let me tell you something. Eduardo is very humble guy, because that man was incredible. He used to get out in Caracas. This is a bird cage, and that man, I don't know how he do it. He was closer one season, very successful one, and he get a lot of out in a very high, 1,000 meters above the sea with a ball in a bird cage, and that man was really good. So that man was really good pitcher. So let me tell you something. He was a very good pitcher. So I don't know. Imagine if he had the grabbing or all the substance right we have now. So maybe he could make the major for 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, not that I am, sort of impugning Eduardo at all on this, but the people have used substances forever, So
oh yeah.
just because you whether or not you use them is not that's not a here.
But
there,
you,
really.
as a scientist, doctor,
Yes.
does really affect the final outcome of the hit of a hit or so? Because for me,
actually, the substance isn't for the hitter. The substance is for the pitcher.
yes, I know.
Yeah.
But does that affect the outcome? So if I'm a hitter, and I don't know, 100 spin more in 1 second or 1 millisecond, that affect me as a hitter when I hit the ball or something like that, if I have substance or not? I'm asking that because it's for me, for instance, as a columnist and as a writer, right now, like 4 or 5 years ago, with these new statistics, they start to see the exit velocity. Okay, but let me tell you something, Dr. Willis. A home run is a home run. It doesn't matter if it's a short or medium, or it's in the second deck, or just behind the back of the left fielder. A home run, it's a home run no matter what. So that's what
According to the
happens for me.
Texas Rangers manager, it's not.
It is.
The other day he said that the Yankee Stadium was a little league park.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind for the kind of numbers that you're referring to there with like exit velocity, or to a large extent, the things that we talk about and the problems that I think MLB thinks exist seem to be an artifact of the fact that we now do have StatCast, that we now have ball tracking information. The idea of drag being important at all was not something people were aware of, because we've only been able to measure drag starting in 2015. And suddenly it became a thing. I mean, having looked at the way the baseballs are constructed, there really was not much of a difference. The difference that I found was, from like 2014 to 2017, was that the thickness of the laces had changed. But I've gone back and looked in the past, and the thickness of the laces changes. It's not like it's always the same. Home run rates also change. Interestingly enough, that might be related to lace thickness. I'm looking into that. But otherwise, the baseballs were made exactly the same. And it's almost like MLB decided that this increase in home runs that they were able to relate to the drag of the ball meant there was a problem with the ball, without actually looking farther into what it could be. So the way that I've described this is that the best way to break something is to try and fix something that wasn't broken to begin with. And it really feels like there's a lot of that. I mean, they're also like, they're trying to change things so fast, they couldn't figure out if it was broken, you couldn't have figured out what the fix is.
Okay.
But
So
I don't think the fix has ever been necessary or even possible. I'm not sure we can actually improve the ball based on how it's currently made. I don't think it's made well enough.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I agree with you. It's like the big why. It's a why am I gonna adjust something that probably doesn't need to be adjusted.
Right.
So then it like wakes up the
I
attention
agree.
to like, are we changing balls to change stats in baseball? Are we changing balls to make the hitters look better? Since probably the pitchers like fastballs are faster. I mean,
I'm
you
not
see these guys that are
sure.
throwing like 100 miles an hour in
Yeah.
every team, and several guys you didn't used to see that before.
Yeah.
So there's certain probably they think,
Mhm.
oh, let's change the ball a little bit because these guys are
Yeah.
not hitting as much as before.
I can't. I mean, I'm thinking of like what Pete Alonso said with the they're using different balls in different years for a particular free agent class. The problem with that is that it's not. Well, first of all, they don't seem to know well enough how to redesign the ball such that certainly the deadened ball that they redesigned is doing. It's even though it is leading to fewer home runs, it's leading to fewer home runs for exactly the opposite reason than what they intended. They were specifically going for lower exit velocities with the same amount of drag. And so that would lead to shorter home runs. Now we have higher exit velocities with a lot more drag, which still is leading to fewer home runs, but it's the reverse of what they had wanted. So I'm not sure that the redesigns are working well. But on top of that, the idea of all hitters being affected or all pitchers being affected, I'm not sure where that like, are they out to get hitters or that doesn't make sense to me, especially having two kinds of baseballs. Like how would you deploy that so that it's advantage to one or the other? I mean,
Doctor,
yeah.
Are you a physicist? A physic?
Yeah, I'm an astrophysicist.
Okay, so because I'm always say that the problem right now with baseball is they changed the angle of the swing. So that's why we have more strikeouts and more home runs and everything. And, a round surface with another round surface, and the point of contact is like this, more,
Yeah.
much more than us like that. So I think the ball doesn't have to do with all this, more strikeouts than hits and everything. I think
yeah.
it's a different approach because they want to economize resources in talking about of hits and doubles. So they think that the single is not good, so only home runs, and they're making the baseball boring because baseball is walks, strikeouts, and home runs, and that's it. That's what they want.
Well,
so why to change the baseball?
Define they. Who's the they?
They are the general managers and all the.
But that's the point. It's the teams because it's statistic. I mean, as opposed to MLB. In fact, MLB does not seem happy with that. But the goal, I mean, frankly, it's kind of a two-edged thing because on the one hand, the term that they use is 3 true outcomes, which is walks, strikeouts, and home runs, and I get that. And yeah, if you run the numbers, it actually turns out that you're going to hit more home, you're basically going to score more if you stick to those things. And so there are just certain kinds of situations where teams will perform better and win. Like the shift is another one where it makes it better for the team to win. Like it's easier for the team to win when they apply those things. Now, that being said,
but now
it does make the game. I like, I am very much a defense fan, so I am not a 3 true outcomes fan. However, I also can appreciate the fact that the teams that are doing that are also trying to win. And when I compare that to like the A's or the Reds or teams where it's like they really don't care whether or not they're winning, it's like I don't know. I mean,
you know that I'm thinking right now about what you're saying, and I also think about when like what if MLB thought about probably we caught Sammy Sosa with a cork bat, and we probably gonna cut more people with cork bats. So actually, hitters are looking for a way to hit the ball like out of the park or much better. So if these guys are gonna keep using cork bats and they're gonna look like cheaters, why don't we just make them a ball that like travels farther?
What
You know what I mean? Or just to finish, what if guys are getting asteroids to hit the ball farther? Why don't we just stop that and make a ball that when they hit it, it travels farther? I'm thinking about that right now. And probably like all these about the baseball being used has to be or came up after all these, asteroid things or cork bats or whatever. What do you think?
Yeah, actually, what I think has been interesting is with, the ball to some extent, but frankly, the kind of changes that they keep asking for in the game ultimately seem to come down to asking the hitters to adjust. It comes back to the hitters a lot. I also have a friend who's pointed, and he's right about this, pointed out like the unwritten rules that we refer to all the time. Pretty much every single unwritten rule, and I advise that I'm impugning pitchers here. They seem to come down to saving the pitcher's ego. They really do. Think about every single unwritten rule you can think of. They come down to, not running up the score at the end, or there's all these things where you're just, or not showboating if you're hit a home run. It's like they all seem to be because somehow they think the pitcher will be overly sensitive. That's kind of extreme, but when you think about it, every single one is about making the pitcher not feel bad. And so, even the stuff we're talking about now, it's like it's all somehow we need to fix what the hitters are doing. I have to wonder, could we ask the pitchers to do something at all?
Exactly, because it looks like, okay, I've heard these from other major league pitchers. It's like, all right, hitters can hit with batting gloves. Hitters can put like the tennis tape around. Hitters can use glue or pine tar or whatever you call it to hit better. And they adding all these things to the bat. So why pitchers can do kind of the same thing? Probably, of course, it was legal before.
So you have the control.
I don't have a problem with sticky stuff, like personally.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like,
I don't have a problem with it at all.
What do you think about these?
I love it. I love
what
that
do you think?
sentence. That's it.
What do you?
That's right, because we also
instead of
we are also watching a lot of hit by pitchers right now. The Mets are the leaders in Major League Baseball with players yeah.
And by the way, because of the ball is dead, we have a 375 average hitter in Manny Machado. So we have 300 hitters.
Yeah, I have a question for Eduardo.
15 300 hitters. So that's
I have a pitcher question for Eduardo though. One of the things that is really showing out, and this is one example. In fact, it actually sort of speaks to what you were talking about before with being able to find the dent. When I'm getting baseballs, they really, players talking about them feeling spongy, they're right. They really do feel kind of squishy. Certainly like if I'm getting them, right sort of close to when that, during the game or shortly after. And people have talked about grip problems. What I'm wondering is, in the past, when people talk about grip problems, it seems to be related to traction, to how slick the ball is. And so if you have sticky stuff, it therefore means, I remember, was it Noah Syndergaard, where he talked about how he has he doesn't want to have to hold the ball much. This was like with the 2019, because they were so slick that the ball would fall out of his hand because he was used to really not putting much pressure with his fingers. And that's one way that sticky stuff can help, is on that grip. So here's my question. For balls that are squishy, is when people talk about a grip problem, is that the same as that traction problem, or could it just be that there's something about like the way, that it's just like where your fingers are sitting and how you think it's going to come off your fingers. It doesn't do it right because there's too much give.
Yeah, I think
in
my opinion, in my experience, it's like you said, I felt balls that had dents. I felt them, and I could, because I was a researcher of the ball, like in the bullpen, trying to squeeze every part of the ball and try to feel a grip, and then that's why you find these dents, like in every part of the ball. But everything comes down, like for me, to the seams, because the seam that's a little bit higher in some balls, and probably in the 2019 they were very, very like more dynamic to the shape of the ball, and then you couldn't get that grip that when the ball came out of your fingers, you couldn't give that final slap to the ball and feel your fingers on the seam trying to get more top or backspin.
Actually, if any of you guys, I'd love this. If you want to do an experiment for me, you can make a ball that's basically a 2019 at home. It's super easy. I discovered this by accident. Take any baseball. Take any baseball. You want to soak the cover a bit, just enough so that it's damp. Throw it in the dryer, like the tumble dryer, for 15 to 45 minutes. I ended up doing this because someone sent me like a bunch of sort of soaked baseballs that I really had to dry out, and I didn't put them in that long because I didn't want to mess with them too much. But they came out and they were perfectly round with insanely slick leather and flat seams. I'm like, oh, okay, this is clearly how they did it. But so, and these weren't 2019. So yeah, so seriously, try it and get back to me and tell me what happens, because it's like, it's just really interesting that, yeah, this seems to have happened, and that's how they made the 2019s. But otherwise, it's also like a good example of that the ball really can be the same on the inside and yet be totally different on the outside because of one thing that they did. And I'm reasonably sure they would have done it because it makes them dry faster. Normally it takes like a week for a baseball to dry when they air dry it. And they just introduced the AAA balls. So if you went from 1.2 million to 1.8, why not speed up drying, right?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you. That's a great point.
Please try that. Please try it.
I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna stay open to whatever you would like to do with baseballs. I will do it for you and for your contribution to this research. So my final point about the ball and these substances that pitchers could use, if MLB is trying to make a baseball with a sticky surface, so to make the pitcher have some grip on the ball, isn't it better for me? I think, in my opinion, it would be better an external substance that the pitcher can use. So they're not trying to mix all these ingredients or materials to make the ball sticky. Just have something that is light, something that is not so, or has a percentage of stickiness to the ball, so you can use, everybody knows you're using, because if you consider, like, when it's a really, really cold weather and your hand is very, very dry, when you get the skin to the leather is very, very slippery. I mean, you really have to use either make your fingers wet. You have to rub the ball with sweat. I mean, you naturally look for that. So if you allow the pitcher to use something that is at least very, very light, instead of making a ball so technological, to have this, because if you make the ball a little bit sticky, it's going to stick to the barrel of the bat too, and it's going to have a much better backspin.
What I tend to think of, and I think we're on the same page here, is that, having talked to guys like you, one person I talk to a lot, he doesn't use sticky stuff at all. He never has. To hand him a ball where it's already pre-tacked, that's probably not what he wants. On the other hand, you have different guys going to want different things. Think about it like putting pine tar on the bat. Different batters put different amounts of pine tar. So having something like, like having the rosin bag, literally have like a little container of the same stuff that people can use. Everyone can use the same stuff, and then they can decide how much they want to use.
Exactly,
That would be
because
great.
if we get saliva on the fingers, it's wrong. If we get dirt, it's wrong. So you always have to weave your fingers, and there's still this constantly battle with the nature of throwing a ball and trying to feel good, and people that saying that it's illegal to throw a ball like that, they're gonna have to be like, and hitters using whatever they want, and they're probably gonna use to hit the bats. Like if you're gonna swing the ball, and your bat is gonna always stay, it's not gonna get slippery. Of course you're gonna hit much better.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And if you pitch with something in your hand that the ball is going to do whatever you want it to do, of course you're going to have more confidence. You're going to throw those balls like very, very, very good. So
But what
this
about
is
the
going to
back
be
you
complete.
have?
Sorry.
What about the bag you have in the mound, Eduardo?
What's that?
That doesn't. The bag you have on the mound when you get.
The rosin bag? Yeah.
Yes, the rosin bag.
Rosin bag is a lot of time because a lot of pitchers sweat their hands. And if you get this rosin bag, is to make your hand dry. It's not to. It is a little bit sticky. Yes, it is. If you add sunscreen to that rosin bag, it makes it very sticky. So now it's gonna be. I would say like a legal sticky because it's not like really, really like much sticky.
Sunscreen and rosin shouldn't be a problem. I mean, like, what? Forgive me. What, are they expecting pitchers to not wear sunscreen? I mean, it's kind of excessive. Like, I don't know that it feels like it's a solution in search of a problem.
I use sunscreen all the time. I used it, and I learned it from a guy that played in the major leagues with the Orioles, and he had his hand. I said like, "Hey, what's in your hand? It's black." Oh, that's sunscreen with rosin bag. That would stick to the ball. I'm using that.
I don't want to just, like, there's so many conversations I've had with people. It's like, yeah, I can think of any number of ways.
Doctor, don't you think we are being Puritan in some degree because we want to be everything perfect? So now if an umpire would just get a millimeter of an inch out of the strike zone, that is a bad umpire. It's impossible for a human being being perfect. So do you think we are being very Puritan in this kind of thing with just accessories, and we're maybe forgetting what that really matters, which is
there is definitely that feel. Like anybody who wants I mean, baseball has always been a game of numbers and statistics, but I think it's great. In fact, like, I love the fact that, people will, even now they talk about, okay, there's all these numbers, like, and how this is somehow like a bad thing. It's like, didn't you guys have baseball cards? Every baseball card has statistics on the back. There have always been numbers in this game. That's just how it is. And whether, how numbers are approached or applied, it changes, and the game itself changes. I mean, like, the idea of, and forgive me, Alfredo, the idea that you have, a complaint because this isn't the same game as in the 70s. No, it's not, and it shouldn't be. Or Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is his own era, and comparing Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds is ludicrous. It's absolutely insane. So just. But to just, sort of accept the way that the game changes and love the way that it is. I mean, like, I love these young guys that we're seeing now. I love seeing Fernando Tatis Jr. I love seeing Jazz Chisholm. I love, just the guys who are there at Juan Soto, where they're having so much fun playing. And there's this joy, and they celebrate, and they have attitude, and it's lovely. It's fabulous, And so anybody who sits there and they're like, they're somehow being disrespectful. It's like, well, if the pitcher doesn't feel disrespected, that's fine. And a lot of times the guy doesn't,
Guys,
I've actually seen pitchers go back and be like, so I'm going to give you attitude after you've done it for me.
Exactly.
But it's for fun.
Exactly. Always going to be for the best interest of everybody. So,
and so,
I mean, we're just going around.
People are being Puritan, but it's not a good idea.
You as a pitcher, you as a pitcher never allowed a perreo for. I know you very well.
To add a little bit more about what you guys said, is that if MLB is doing it, it's changing the scores, it's changing the stats, and it would be for the better, whatever
Yes, of course.
it is.
Well,
So
it would be nice if I mean, I'm honestly not sure if there is any precedent for what MLB has done with the baseball. Not just that they secretly changed the ball, changed the main piece of equipment, you know, and had to be outed that they did it, but using two different kinds secretly. Like, have you ever heard of any sport where they're using, you know, two kinds of, you know,
yeah, that's what we're
or,
saying.
you know, whatever.
Like, don't make it a secret.
Right.
I mean, everybody should be open to it, but don't make it a secret.
Right.
If you buy the factory of the balls, I mean, and if you're doing all this stuff, like not telling anybody, that's what pisses people off. So, and you're playing with people's careers,
well,
you know, and there's
like,
money involved and everything.
I'd also like us to go back to one baseball, because there is yet no explanation for using two baseballs together.
And they did it in soccer. They did it in soccer. Soccer, they changed the ball. The ball.
Oh, they changed the ball all the time in soccer. That's a very standard thing. Yeah.
Yes.
What would be the problem?
Every World Cup,
they say
every World Cup have a different ball.
Right.
Exactly.
Football, yes.
So whatever the sponsor is, they change the ball, and the ball is better, you know, and they change the next year if it didn't work. But they announce it, they say it. They don't keep it as a secret, you know.
And every you know, when basketball did it and the players hated it, they changed it back. Yeah, I watched Formula One, and they definitely changed the rules every single year.
In basketball, they use sticky stuff. In basketball, they also use the sticky stuff. So, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to leave. I have a session here with a pitcher. So, thank you very much. I enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate your comments and your questions. So, I'm here for you guys.
Ball, though.
Yeah, get my contact from Marco. I'm here for you. Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much, guys. See you next time.
Thanks.
One last question about the ball. So, do you think in the near future it could be we're going to return to the previous live ball or something, or the humidor, or that kind of standardized the baseballs? What do you think? What is the future of baseballs?
What do I think will happen? I have no idea. All I really know is that MLB has, in the last couple years, actually more than that, since 2019, really, for as long as they've owned Rawlings, whatever they haven't told us, and they're not going to tell us now. So I have no idea. I look forward to, you know, getting to a season where I don't feel like there are questions that have to be answered, but it's not going to be like, it's going to be now into 2023 because there's weird stuff this season. It's like, I'm going to need a season where it's boring, where there's like nothing to find. If you had told me in 2018 or in 2017, 2018, that I would be doing this every single year, I would never have believed you. And yet now it's something where until we have a boring year, which minimum is next year, this has to keep happening. So I don't know, because Emily has yet to answer any of the questions for why they did the changes, any of the changes to begin with.
I don't know what.
What's the idea? Sorry, Alfredo. What's the perfect ball for the game?
I would start with saying that the perfect ball is probably not one that MLB designs. And so no, sir, they no, I know that sounds, it's not actually a flip remark. There's a lot of skill that goes into understanding how constructing the baseball works, how the manufacturing works, what subtle changes will do to how the ball performs, and that stuff isn't really being taken into account. And until you have, if you did want to do a redesign, it's something that would require a lot more than what we've seen so far. But, you know, just maybe if they just started by undoing everything they think they've done to fix it, that would be, you know, can we just rewind back to 2018? That's a good start. But I don't know if they'll do that. I really don't.
MLB consulted you about changes of baseballs?
Oh, no. course not.
It is
Why
possible
would they do that?
to make a ball that it's perfect for pitchers and perfect for hitters. It's not possible that anyone's complaining with a baseball.
Well, on the other hand, though, MLB has done something this season that I would never have expected possible, which is they're never going to make a ball that both pitchers and hitters like, but they've somehow made one that they both hate with a fiery passion. And that is in itself remarkable. When was the last time you've heard of a baseball that they both can't stand?
Yeah.
It's always one or the other. But
Yeah,
both
that's my point. It's one of or the other because
except this year.
Yeah, except this year. Yeah, because or it's a baseball that helps to the hitters, or it's a baseball that helps to the pitcher. So what is the balance here? How do you make a ball that everyone is happy?
Well, honestly, I think at this point, it's almost like if they just went back to the 2018 ball, everyone would be happy because therefore all of the weird stuff would stop happening. But even then, I'm not sure if it's going to take me taking apart baseballs over the course of a season to find out that they've done that again. It's like, even that's a problem. It's like, we shouldn't know this after the fact. So I don't know. I really don't know what they're going to do. And I don't say that flippantly. I mean, I genuinely, every year, I don't think it can get stranger, and every year it seems to. So I have no idea.
Well, doctor, let me tell you something. I'm very happy to have Manny Machado hitting 375 and 15 people between 375 and 290s. So that's a very good thing. And we, fortunately, we have Mr. Saint Buckshaw-Walter. So he's playing a small baseball. So I'm loving that because I hate three-way baseball. So I love full baseball. So we have the old school combined with the new school.
Did you watch the Nats Brewers last night, where the Nats laid down 2 safety squeezes back to back?
No, I couldn't see, but I know that's
you
great.
Missed that. That's if you want small, that's small ball.
Well, actually, Oakland
back-to-back
A's,
safety squeezes. When was the last time you heard that?
Yeah, well, long time ago.
I know that's the point. It's been a long time.
Yes, and Dr. Willis, the other thing is I watch a game where the A's bunt the ball. The A's, the Oakland A's are bunting the ball this year. So, that's because of the ball. So that's great.
I suppose bunting this ball is one thing you can do. Although, frankly, even that might be tough because I don't know how this deadened ball is. Like if it's misshapen enough, how does the bunting work?
Do you think this is the real dead ball, like the 20s?
It's not well. Actually,
like the 20s
the dead ball to live ball transition. I mean, there are a bunch of things that were involved with that, but one thing that I do think happened was that the interior, that yarn that I showed, up until the transition, it had, because it was World War I, they had actually been using lower quality yarn inside the ball. And I've having looked at, say, like minor league balls that are made in China, they absolutely have lower quality yarn. This is just it's just not every type of baseball has the same quality on the inside.
Have you ever seen have you ever studied or grab dead ball baseball? Dead ball baseball?
From that era? No. I don't know where I'd get one.
But there's there's no surviving baseball.
Oh no, there might be. I mean, like next time I'm at the Hall of Fame, I might be able to track one down, but I haven't had a chance in the last few years. So,
okay, but that would be. I think that would be a very good study, wouldn't it?
Well, it's more that I mean, one thing that does seem, and I think this is very likely part of why we went from the dead ball to the live ball era, in the early 20s, is that they were using lower quality yarn on the inside during World War I, because, you know, that's what happens in a world war. And then after the war, they went back to using Australian merino, which is higher quality yarn. This is something that I've had ongoing debates with people about, because there seems to be this idea that somehow changing the type of yarn on the inside is not going to affect how the ball performs. There are two things. First, I'm a knitter, actually. This is like one of the reasons that I think I've been able to address these problems differently than other people. Like, I do knitting design, I work with that stuff all the time. And different kinds of wool really do behave differently. I mean, like, I can sit down and, you know, we won't go into it here, but I can actually describe to you why the wool inside a ball that's made for, you know, the minor leagues is more likely to produce a deader ball than one that's made for the majors. And part of that is because of the nature of the yarn on the inside, really. So the fact that they would have that having higher quality yarn somehow making the ball more lively makes sense. And at the time, the commissioner even said that was the only change. People weren't willing to believe it. But what people also have to take into account, and even with this dead ball, it's one of the things that I know came up in some of my discussions, was people seem to think, okay, well, we only changed this one thing, which granted was a huge change as far as I was concerned. And like, well, no, these other things should just basically be within the noise. They shouldn't have a material effect. And yet, meanwhile, I've managed to show that even the thickness of the laces that really was in the noise was having enough of an effect where people chose to identify the 2017 ball as juiced compared to the 2014 ball. And so, like, you know, not having a change from like replacing the wool is much, you know, like having it be the same when you've replaced something like that is much harder to do than having a change. Keeping something constant is hard.
For me, it's such a great pleasure having you. So we're making like one or two international editions of our podcasts a week. So you are the first guest for this week. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very pleased that such a great doctor and a physicist and, you know, a doctor is studying baseball. So that's why it's American pastime, because even the
I was a baseball person.
Studying baseball.
I was a baseball person since the day I was born. I didn't become an astrophysicist till college. So
astrophysicist?
Yeah, astrophysicist. Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. Sure. I did research. I did NASA research for a long time before I started doing this stuff.
Wow.
Seriously.
That's even better. So I understand why you are so concerned about baseball and all the physics involved in baseball. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Dr. Willis. I'm not able to call you Meredith even because, you know.
That's fine.
It's just respect. And thank you for Marcos to invite me. And well, Marcos, you have the last word. You are the guest.
Thank you, Doctor, for joining us, and I enjoy a lot this podcast, and I hope that you do too.
Well, thanks for having me. This was great, and I'd love to, you know, as the season goes on, if we want to talk again, that'd be great. So
okay,
of course, maybe
of course.
For the World Series, we can make a World Series edition with baseball.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they change the ball again for the World Series, we'll have something to talk about, right?
We have no. Goodbye.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you.